Welcome to Janet's Planet, where we are traveling at the speed of thought. And boy, oh boy, do we have a great day for you today. We are delighted to introduce you to Dr. Ken Carpenter, who has started as an intern for Viking, has worked on the Hubble mission, is going to help us celebrate the 30th anniversary. And today is brought to you by a joint effort of Explore Mars and the Viking Mars Mission Education Preservation Project. We're grateful to Rachel Tillman for making this introduction. And so without further ado, welcome Dr. Ken Carpenter. Take it away.
Greetings to all. Great to see such a good showing here. I'm excited to be here for part of this, and I will hopefully tell you a little bit about how I became an astronomer and how you could too, if you want to, or how you could get to work at NASA without being an astronomer. You don't have to be a scientist to work at NASA, so I'll explain that as we go along. So we'll do that for maybe the first half, and then we'll get into looking at some of the recent imagery from Hubble and a lot of stuff related to the 30th anniversary, which we just had on April 24th. It was the 30th anniversary of the launch of Hubble in April of 1990. So let's see if this NASA scientist can actually figure out how to share a screen. Sometimes the technology is challenging.
So okay. Just imagine, guys, if it's this hard to launch Zoom, think about the intricacies of making sure the Hubble telescope points its cameras and telescope in the right direction.
Okay, can you guys see my title slide? Okay.
We are good to go, sir.
Okay. Very good. So as Jenna has said, my name is Dr. Ken Carpenter. You can just call me Dr. Ken to keep it simple. I'm an astrophysicist, means I study objects on the sky, and the physicist part of it means in some cases I try to model it and understand the physics behind it, what's powering the objects, what makes them glow or move, and that kind of thing. I work at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, which is in Greenbelt, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. And have two sort of programmatic jobs, as we call it. One is the operations project scientist for the Hubble Space Telescope. And I'll tell you what that means in a minute. And I'm also a ground system project scientist for a new telescope called the Wide Field Infrared Survey Telescope, or WFIRST. And that one is still being designed and built. We'll probably launch in the mid-2020s, but I'll refer to that a little bit along the way too. It has the same resolution as Hubble, but 100 times the field of view. So it looks at much more of the sky at a given image than Hubble will do. But it does concentrate mostly on the infrared light that's redder than what the eye sees, whereas Hubble concentrates on ultraviolet and optical, ultraviolet being bluer than what the eye sees. So they kind of complement each other in terms of the colors of light that they look at. On the title slide here, you just see a couple of images that we'll see along the way, showing influences on me over the years and things that I've been privileged to witness. Can you guys see the cursor if I move it around as a pointer?
Oh, we sure can.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So let's move on for the moment. Okay, so how did I get to be a NASA scientist? And for this, I'm going to give away my age here very clearly, but talk about early inspirations. And one of them was simply reading a lot of science fiction. I was a voracious reader growing up, and this illustration here shows 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. He was one of my favorite authors, and he did what's called hard science fiction, which means it was very strong. His fiction was based very strongly on fact. He would sometimes try to extrapolate about where it might go in the future, but he tried to get the physics and the astrophysics as good as possible. So that got me intrigued in space and science in general. In 1964 and 65, there was a thing called a World's Fair, which you don't hear too much about nowadays. But in this case, in New York, there was a 1,200-acre exhibit where countries and companies from all over the world came in and celebrated both the diversity of the world, but also about the wonders of science and technology. So you could go to this fair, and instead of going to like a country fair where you look all the country animals and farms, you would see all the wonders of science and technology. And some of the biggest companies of the time, the car companies, General Electric, Walt Disney, would sponsor these huge pavilions where you could go in and have very magical rides. And the only thing that's kind of like that nowadays is Disney World, especially Epcot Center, if you've ever been there. But you would go into these exhibits and they'd show you what the future is going to be like. And there'd be cities under the sea and cities on the moon and all sorts of wonderful things to get you excited about the future. So that helped inspire me, wanted to get into a science or technical field that inspired a lot of others, including people like TV producers. You'll notice in, if you've ever seen Iron Man 2, there's a whole section there that nods back at that World's Fair. In Iron Man, it's actually called the Stark Expo, but that's where that comes from. Of course, in the mid-60s, the original series Star Trek premiered, and that was, for many of us, the first real serious science fiction that was on TV. There had been other things before that, but nothing really of high quality. And this grabbed a lot of our attentions and inspired folks all through NASA. If you go and talk to people nowadays, I'd say maybe half of us have been inspired by one version or another of Star Trek. I mean, the younger people have been inspired by Star Trek The Next Generation or Enterprise or Deep Space Nine, whatever, but it continues to inspire, and there's a good interaction between people in Trek and here. They come and take a look at what we're doing and they get ideas for their stories in the future. We look at what they do and get inspired to go on and do bigger and better things. And then, of course, on top of all this, there was the early NASA space program. I grew up during the era of Mercury and Gemini and Apollo, and that, of course, was a huge inspiration as well. So there were a lot of different things coming together to get me excited about going into science and astronomy. And
Dr. Ken, I'm going to just insert here. Listen to what he said. It's like the science writers come to NASA to make sure their science is factual. The scientists at NASA listen to these science writers and go, that's not a bad idea. So remember, guys, as we have talked even with our music person yesterday, our science can reside right alongside our art because those two things inform each other very much.
Well said. I'm actually very interested in that whole interaction of art and science. We've actually done some shows. I don't have slides of it here today, but we've done shows all over the world where we've put out a call to the art community to say, okay, we're going to have these 10 rooms set up with Hubble images in them. What kind of art would you make to interpret or complement that science? And we had one exhibit like that in Venice a couple of years ago, which was a huge success. And some people did painting, some did sculpture, some did, when we showed a room of images of star death, like some of those nebulas that we talked about earlier, the artist made a bunch of cobwebs and skeletons kind of around the room in the images because it was a parallel to death in the real world. So I enjoy that. And it gives us a way to reach people who otherwise aren't interested in science. If they see it through the artistic eye, then they learn something about us and we learn something about art. So that's very good. Okay, so how did this get me into astronomy? Well, if you really want to know, I mean, I was primed after all of this. I was ready to go, but I hadn't actually taken that step. And what finally got me to take that step is there was a episode of the original series Star Trek in which they meet the god Apollo, or a being that says, I was Apollo, I was the source of all your myths and legends of ancient Greece. And in that episode, they just kind of tossed out along the way that they were going into a star system around a star called Beta Geminorum. And at the time, I didn't know anything about that. So I kind of wondered, is that a real star, or they just make that up like the rest of the story? Because we knew that we haven't really met Apollo in space. So was it a real star? So I went to the library. There was no internet back in those days. I'd actually trudge down the road and go into dig out a book. And I pulled out an astronomy book or two and discovered this map here that showed that Beta Gem was real. It's actually the star Pollux in Gemini, the twins, this whole constellation there. And then in addition to discovering that Beta Gem was real, I discovered this whole universe that's been studied through astronomy and all the gorgeous pictures that were in the library books. And it was every bit as exciting as what I was seeing in science fiction and at the World's Fair and in Star Trek. And I never looked back.
That's so great. We did have a question from Jesse going, was Star Wars also something that would later kind of like keep that interest going? I mean, you were hooked at this point anyway, right?
Right. And unlike some folks, I have room in my life for both universes. I do enjoy Star Wars very much as well. Star Trek is always home for me because that's what I started with and is the more serious of the two. But Star Trek is science fiction in my mind. Star Wars is science fantasy or space opera, and there's plenty of room for both. I thoroughly enjoy both. I consume Star Wars every bit as quickly as Star Trek. I may have seen Star Wars a fewer times. I mean, the original series Star Trek, I don't even want to count how many times I've seen each episode. But yeah, I enjoy both. And we've actually done on one of the Hubble anniversaries, we did a Star Wars tie-in when The Force Awakens came out. We actually found an object on the sky that looked like a lightsaber, actually like a double-bladed lightsaber, and we put that out and we talked to TV stations around the country about the lightsaber and about Star Wars. And I got the best assignment I've ever gotten at work. In preparation for that, they told me to go home and watch all of the Star Wars movies. For work.
Hey kids, how about that for an assignment? We want you to go home and watch movies. Not a bad day at work, huh?
I thought it was pretty cool. And it turned out to be useful because the news anchors wanted to talk, about Star Wars as well as about Hubble. And I actually had one spot where they were saying, are you going to protect us from, Darth Vader, or in the case of Star Trek, the Borg coming at us? And I reached under the chair and we had set up a lightsaber there. And I said, yes, I'm ready. And then, and then the TV anchor reached down and pulled out a lightsaber from his news desk and we dueled in the middle of the story.
Oh, bravo.
So you got to be prepared,
True.
Okay, so after that, I was set to go. How did I get into a more professional state? At this point, everything was, an amateur. I started out as a backyard astronomer here. I bought and built some modest-sized telescope for science fairs in high school and the like. Explored the sky every time I went around a year and saw everything I could with that telescope. I wanted a slightly larger one so I could see dimmer objects the next year. And about the time of middle school or junior high, I'm not sure what it's called nowadays, but in the kind of 8th grade level, I decided that I really did want to become a professional astronomer. So studied math and science in high school and college, got a Master of Arts degree. Yeah, Master of Arts, you can actually go somewhere with an Master of Arts degree. It doesn't have to be a Master of Science to go there. It just means you're more generally educated, and that's useful for everybody. So I did that at bachelor's and master's at Wesleyan University in Connecticut. And then I got a PhD from Ohio State University in Columbus years later. However, my first direct exposure to NASA was actually from this project that you heard alluded to earlier from Rachel Tillman, the Viking mission to Mars. And that Rachel runs a organization that tries to preserve the artifacts from the mission and also the lessons learned from it. So I was actually a student intern on that way back in 1976. I had just finished my undergraduate degree at Wesleyan and got to go out to Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Los Angeles to be there while the first soft landing occurred on Mars in July of 1976. So that was a really exciting time. It was a chance to meet some bona fide scientists for real, including Carl Sagan, who was on the team at the time. And it just further influenced me to go on. I didn't obviously end up going on into planetary science. So in that sense, it failed. But the purpose of it was really to get people just interested in science and NASA in general. And that it certainly worked very well. While I was doing my PhD at Ohio State, I was what's called a guest observer on a small satellite that preceded Hubble. So it's called the International Ultraviolet Explorer, IUE for short. And that was a small telescope, only about 18 inches in diameter, but it was a workhorse the first time we got really good ultraviolet observations of the sky. And I was able to do that while I was getting my degree in the late 70s and early 80s at OSU. You'll see this picture again, but that's a picture of my intern group at JPL in 76. That's an artist drawing of IUE. I'll talk more about this picture in a minute though. Okay, and then as a professional, I went to the University of Colorado for what's called a postdoc. After you get your PhD, you spend a couple of years trying to do nothing but science and getting a lot of publications out and getting ready to get what we call a real job, a permanent job. I was given a choice about a year into that, saying, well, okay, you're supposed to just do full-time research. You're supposed to cut out the rest of the world and not let anything distract you. But there is this opportunity to get involved in one of the original Hubble instruments. So you'll give up some research, but it might lead somewhere. Just a kind of a tossed away comment. And, I kind of agonized over it because I wasn't, should I do the traditional thing? Should I go a little out of the box and work on this newfangled Hubble instrument? And it actually scares me at some level to think how close I came to saying no and just sticking with the research, because by having decided to do that, it in the end led me to NASA and Goddard into Hubble. So it was a very good thing to have gone out of the box, done something a little non-traditional. So I always like to tell students, don't be afraid to do something a little out of the ordinary when you get the opportunity. Janet, looked like you had a comment.
You know what? This is making my heart, like my buttons are bursting off my vest here, because this is the stuff that I want all of you guys online hearing. It's like, I was going, and I can understand, it's like, do I do the traditional thing and just finish this, or do I go over with this thing that may or may not work? But because you did that, you have provided and been part of something that has inspired the whole field of astronomy with Hubble. I mean, when I think about seeing the first time I saw the deep field image from Hubble and realizing that all of those glowing parts and particles could be other worlds and planets and solar systems, just staring at that thing for hours. So, but hear Dr. Ken, what he said, don't be afraid to be a little bit different, go a little bit out of the box, because you never know what science you may discover.
Well said, Janet, well said.
Thank you for choosing Hubble.
Yeah, who knew how close I came to not doing it? Anyways, after doing that, I did eventually move to NASA Goddard. Originally, I was just an employee of the University of Colorado. I was the sole university employee on the East Coast of the US. Then after about 3 years, I moved into the government as a civil servant, continuing to support development of the Goddard High Resolution Spectrograph, that's the GHRS. In 1991, I moved up into the project overall off of the GHRS team and become an operations project scientist to oversee all of Hubble operations, both the science operations and the mission operations. And the funny thing is, when I agreed to do that, I said, okay, I'll just do this for 3 years. I don't want to get stuck. And 29 years later, I'm still here because it's been so much fun. And because they've let me do other things too. I have some of my time is available for doing science, first of all, but also they let me go off and work on new projects. I've worked on projects for space station. I'm working now on this W1 image. So there's always new stuff to challenge me, although Hubble itself continues to challenge me in ways that I wouldn't have expected would last nearly 3 decades. So it's been my privilege to have witnessed basically all of HST's lifetime from before launch onward. And it's been a great deal of fun, and it remains to be fun. Okay, I thought it would be a little fun here, especially to keep Rachel happy, but to show you the evolution of Dr. Ken over the years. So I start off with this image in the upper left here from 1976, and can anybody figure out which person I am here? Maybe
My
you say
lips are sealed.
I know the voices are turned off, but can they chat?
They can chat. Anybody got a guess as to which might be Dr. Ken? They think the guy right in the middle. There's a guy. Is that you in the middle?
This guy?
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. That's the actually over here, one over.
Yeah, that's one over. There you go.
Now, also at the same time, while you see me there, look at this guy next to me. His name is Rick Feinberg. He was also obviously in this Viking group, and he's going to show up in these later pictures. So jump ahead from 1976 to 1990. This is just before the launch of Hubble at Kennedy Space Center. And that's me, believe it or not, in the bright red jacket of the era. You don't see many of those anymore.
The red pants.
You'll see, yeah, I can't tell here. And in the background is the gantry with the Discovery shuttle in it, ready to launch Hubble. In 1993, when we went back for the first servicing mission, I ran into Rick Feinberg again, the guy that was in this picture back here. And in the meantime, he had become the press secretary for the American Astronomical Society. So both of us had gone on to pretty good things after that. Anyways, you see the shuttle for the first servicing mission in December of '93 in the background there. That's the closest I've ever gotten to a prime shuttle. That was really exciting. It was part of the press tour going out there. And then in 2016, Rachel organized this event on the 40th anniversary of the Viking project. And lo and behold, who should show up at that as well, but Rick Feinberg. So you can see we've changed a bit over the years, but still both going strong.
And it looks like we have a quick question from 7-year-old Lucas, who just had a birthday last week. Lucas, what's your question, dear?
This is like just a personal question about 911. It was how did you feel on that day about 911?
Well, you know, I was actually out in California at the time at a Lockheed Martin aerospace, and we were working on a future mission concept. And I remember waking up in the morning at the hotel and seeing the pictures and being, astonished, surprised, shocked about it. Like any event like that, it's scary at first and challenging, but America's very resilient, and we've seen it then. We came back from that very strong. We saw it in microcosm with Hubble when we first launched. The mirror had a flaw in it. It looked like the entire mission was a loss. And just like after 9/11, people dug in, figured out how to fix it, what to do to make, in the case of 9/11, to make the travel safe again. In the case of Hubble, how in the world do we get the telescope to work when it's 300 miles over our head? And in both cases, we came back for it, and we did it then. We'll do it now out of this pandemic as well. Americans are very resilient, very imaginative, and the science community, I must say, is very good at coming up with fixes, and we'll do that.
And one of the things, guys, I'll let you know that when times do get tough, that's why the stars are good to look at. You can go to the Hubble website and go, oh, look at the beauty that's out there. And so as nature continues to give us things to be beautiful and good, always look for the helpers and the good stuff out there.
That's one thing when we were celebrating the anniversary, and I'll show you that stuff in a minute, we wondered, well, should we do this, or are people going to be upset because we're celebrating something in the middle of the pandemic? And answers came back, no, show us the good things, show us the beauty that's out there. People, need to remember that. So that's why we're still doing this, still showing you everything that we find, because it does help to lift us up and keep us inspired and remind us that the universe is bigger than just our little spot of it. And, there's a lot of beauty to appreciate.
Now we do have a question is like, we'll let you talk about what do you do, but Tapa Sweeney in India is wondering, how does dark energy or dark matter affect astronomy? That's still a big old 95% of the universe question, right?
Yes, very, very good. They're two different things. Dark matter is just matter that we can't see directly, but we do detect it because it has a gravitational pull, just like regular matter. So we know there's a lot of it there holding stars, well, not stars, but galaxies, clusters of galaxies together. This hidden dark matter has to be there to keep them from flying apart. So we have some ideas of what that is, but we don't really know for sure. So it's a topic for young astronomers like yourself, or to be astronomers like yourself, to study. But perhaps even more puzzling and intriguing that is dark energy. And that goes back to one of the original purposes for Hubble, was to measure the expansion rate of the universe and the age of the universe by backtracking that expansion. And all we expect it to do is to measure more precisely the rate of expansion and how much it was slowing down, basically, because gravity was pulling things back together. Much to our surprise, that although it did that for the first half of the universe's lifetime, for the first 5 or 6 billion years, the expansion rate did slow down. But for the last 5 billion years or so, the rate of expansion has increased with time. So think about that. It's like if you took an apple and you toss it into the air, you kind of expect it to slow down and then come back to you. Well, what we're seeing is as if you took an apple, tossed it in the air, and it started going faster. Completely non-intuitive, completely not expected by, I don't think, anybody in astronomy. And to this day, we don't know exactly what it is. We have some rough ideas. We wave our hands and say, well, the vacuum of space has energy built into it, and at long distances, that's enough pressure to push things apart and become stronger than gravity, even though gravity is stronger at relatively close distances. So we don't know what it is. So again, whenever we're puzzled by something, we make up a name. And what better name to use than dark? And it doesn't mean it's black, it means dark, as in mysterious. We have no idea what this is. So this force, which is pushing things apart, is one of the biggest discoveries in astronomy in recent years. And it's also one of the more difficult ones to figure out. So this is where we count on folks like you who might come into the field in later years. We need new minds, people to look at physics in a different way than we're doing it, because we're not figuring it out. We're doing things, we're trying to get all the observations we can to characterize how it impacts the universe. Dark matter is pulling things together, dark energy is pushing things apart, and we're trying to measure exactly how strong that is at various distances. But we haven't figured out the physics yet. So we need somebody to come in, maybe work on their PhD degree and figure that out and win a Nobel Prize. That would give you a shot at a Nobel Prize if you could figure out dark energy. So by all means, work on that. And in fact, dark energy and understanding the expansion of the universe is the prime goal of that WFIRST telescope that I told you I was working on. That's in development and is supposed to launch in the mid-2020s. It's a good question. It's one of the most intriguing things in modern astronomy to try to figure out.
And
okay,
it's like,
what do I do?
Rebecca, it's like, yeah, keep on going. Rebecca has a quick question. Astronauts also participated in the Hubble telescope. Did astronauts work on the kind of like technology of Hubble, or were they the ones that were kind of restoring it and putting it into place?
Astronauts would ride up on the shuttle, on the space shuttle, to the telescope. But they were there when we first deployed Hubble. So the original launch in 1990, they went up with it in the shuttle, helped to deploy it into space, make sure it was working before they left. And then on each of the 5 servicing missions that happened in future years, they would go up, pull the telescope into the back shuttle bay, the garage effectively in the back of the shuttle, and the astronauts would go out 2 at a time and work on it. They would replace instruments, they would repair things on site, they would put in new gyroscopes, batteries, solar arrays, whatever was needed. So they do the maintenance and they do the upgrade of the science instruments, which is why Hubble 30 years later is still the leading telescope in the world. It wouldn't be if we still only had instruments from 1990, but the fact that the astronauts would go up and service it is what has kept us going so long, so well. And I'll show you a little bit more about the servicing missions in a minute.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so what would I do just in a single page? I carry out original scientific research. My expertise is looking at the outer atmospheres and winds of stars that are cooler and more evolved than the sun. Basically what we call red giants and supergiants, trying to understand how much material is coming off, what the composition of that material that's getting blown off, and forming the basis for new star systems to form out of. Programmatic work with Hubble is to provide scientific leadership and guidance to the project management. And basically the point there is to make sure that in addition to cost and schedule that the managers have to worry about, that they also worry about the impact of their decisions on science. So I'm there as an advocate for the astronomical community to make sure that they look at the science implications of everything that they do. So in a nutshell, my job is to ensure Hubble is as scientifically productive as possible. And some of that is as exciting as that sounds. Some of it is really dull, bureaucratic nonsense, looking at detailed requirements, forever. But it's been a fun job overall. I do this public education and outreach, which is what we're doing right now. And to be honest, that's the most fun part of the job. I love going out, talking to people, whether it be school groups or big convention events or whatever. It's all a blast to see and talk with you and to feel the excitement out there. And it helps us remember why we're doing this. It's not just for the science, it's for reaching people and getting them excited about the universe as well. And then I pursue development of future space missions like I'm doing with W First. Okay, I don't want to drag out the career part here too much before we get to Hubble, but what do astrophysicists in general do, not just me? Well, everyone has to pay their dues, do some work to get the salary. If you're in schools, you're teaching. If you're at NASA, you're doing the programmatic work like I do with Hubble. If you work for a aerospace company, you have to work on company business at the same time that you're doing the research. And most of us carry out the research in parallel with this teaching or programmatic or company business. And I think I'll leave it at that for now so we can get on to some of the more fun stuff. I probably don't need to go into this too much. I like the job because it's very flexible. You normally get to travel and see the world as you go to national and international meetings. That's not working so well this year with all the stay-at-home orders and whatever, but we're exploring the world virtually instead. You get paid decently, you don't get rich this way, but enough to live comfortably. And I always like to say it's more important to have fun at what you're doing than to get paid a huge amount, because that makes going to work every day fun and entertaining, and that actually doesn't feel like going to work. It feels like you're going off and playing in your own special universe. So we'll leave it at that. Quickly, if you're wondering what requirements, training and education you need, math, science, and writing in general, college undergrad and master's degree, that'll get you some technical jobs, like to be a telescope observer, someone who runs a telescope. You need a PhD if you want to be a full-fledged research astronomer. And then helpful technology, learn, as everybody does nowadays, learn about computers, scientific programming languages. Scientists tend to lean toward Apple products like iMacs and MacBooks. Engineers use more Windows PCs, and everybody uses smartphones for everything. So you probably won't need any special training in that. You already know more than I do about your smartphone. Okay, so get to the highlight of my career here, and that's the Hubble servicing missions that we started talking about. This is a graphic that shows it all on one chart. Launch in 1990 on Discovery with the original set of instruments. Servicing mission 1 in 1993, where you saw the photograph of Rick and I up there, where we replaced 2 of the instruments, put in some gyros, new solar arrays. Servicing mission 2 in 1997, 2 new instruments again that we swapped in. And you go out and you'll see this weird thing here where you have servicing mission 3A and 3B. Well, that's why, although we had 5 servicing missions, the last one is servicing mission 4. It's because 3 got split into A and B, and that's because we had a complete failure of gyros before we were ready to do all of servicing mission 3. So we split it in half, went up and on servicing mission 3A and did the gyros and the other things that were ready, and then later went up in 3B and did the rest of the mission. So 5 servicing missions, but the last one, SM4, where we did everything in creation because we knew it was the last servicing mission. So instead of showing you the traditional NASA high resolution movies of launch here, I thought I'd show you what it looked like as an observer. This is down on the causeway just south of Kennedy, and I'm just going to run through pictures here of the launch that were taken, I think just with my cell phone camera at the time. So you see a moment of ignition. And even from, I think it's about 6 miles away, at this point you start feeling a rumbling of pressure waves hitting your body. And then for a while, you're like, oh, everything's hidden by the cloud, and you hope that that's actually normal and, it's not exploding or something. It wasn't. And then it emerges from the cloud, and the pictures here don't capture it, but man, it shoots off crazy fast like a firecracker. It doesn't lumber off the pad like Saturn V used to. It just goes like you lit a firecracker, and you follow it up into the sky in the tail of fire. And this is a back. You see the edge of the causeway there. It's a glorious day for launch. And slowly it disappears above the cloud deck. So I was privileged to see all of the deploy and the servicing mission launches, some of which were delayed many, many times, some of which went off on the first try. Okay, one final thing on the job front. I just want to make it clear here, and hopefully Janet would appreciate this, is that what's my best job might not be your best job. And the important thing, the best job for you is the one that challenges you, keeps you engaged, and is a lot of fun. And I think the happiest people after they grow up are those who enjoy their jobs, as long as you make enough to be comfortable and you can eat and have a house, whatever. It's not about the money, but more about looking forward to going to work every day and enjoying it. And I'm at an age where I could actually retire, but I won't because I'm having too much fun. Still, 3 or 4 decades into my career, it's like going and having fun, playing every day. And like I said earlier, you don't have to be a scientist to work at NASA. Certainly a lot of us are, but there are engineers, managers, financial analysts, image processors, model builders, public affairs and education officers, web developers, and interns, artists, which actually gets a little close. It's a little bit like the Mars interns Rachel is always talking about, but NASA has a page here, interned on nasa.gov, which puts all of the different internships from all different levels. It starts at high school and goes up through college. And if you go to that site, you can look at the ones that are relevant for you. This summer, we're having to do things a little differently. Instead of bringing interns into Goddard, we're doing virtual internships. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. It's the first time we've done anything like that. But I would encourage you, as you get a little older, into high school and beyond, to check this out. Most of the internships are in the summer. So, between your school years, some go all year. But as you think about what you're doing next summer, you might go to that website and see what the opportunities are. There's internships all across NASA. Doesn't have to be at Goddard. There's 10 centers all around the country, so you can find one that's close to you. and apply there. And that's the best way to get prepared for a career. My experience at Viking internship certainly was pivotal, and you can pick and choose where you want to be and what area you want to explore. And that'll help tell you whether it's really for you or not too. If you go and do the internship and say, and you go run screaming the other way, you don't want a career in that. If on the other hand, you go and you fall in love with it, then you know that you're on the right. After you see these and get inspired, you can send us your own virtual birthday message. If you're tweeting, for instance, or on Instagram, use the hashtags Happy Birthday Hubble and Hubble 30. And then people will be more likely to see them. You don't have to do a video, which is what I'm going to show you here. You could also do, just a text or an image or whatever. But we encourage you to do videos and show your excitement. So let's see, I'll stop the sharing of that and pull up a browser. And let's see. We'll try to resume sharing. And hopefully you can see my browser window now. And the happy birthday wishes.
Perfect.
Okay, very good. Janet was locked up there for a minute, but I think you're back now. Okay. So if you want, you can go to that link. And what we've done is collect all of the ones that came in. We basically showed one video per day leading in the 2 weeks up to the anniversary. But we started out with this montage selection from various people that were going to be in the video. So I'm just going to show you that because that's nice and short. Oh, wait a minute. There we go.
You're beloved by the world, and I think I know why.
Happy birthday to you.
Hubble, happy birthday.
Happy anniversary, Hubble.
Hubble Space Telescope, happy 30th birthday.
Happy 30th birthday, Hubble.
Happy birthday, Hubble.
Happy birthday to the Hubble telescope on its 30th.
The Hubble Space Telescope has been showing us a whole new world for 30 years now.
30 years old, crazy.
You allowed me to gaze at galaxies and wander into the heavens through pictures.
You're beloved by the world, and I think I know why.
You not only imagine what's out there in the heavens, but then you go looking for it.
What do you get the telescope that has everything? Am I right?
Thank you for everything. Thank you for the inspiration, and live long and prosper.
Happy 30th to you. And many more.
I'm going to back that up to there for a second. So that shows you a collection. There's actors, actresses, there's TV producers, there's a Disney cover artist from YouTube, there's a Miss Universe in there. A whole bunch of different folks came in and contributed their birthday wishes. And then after that, we put out the call for others to put it in and out. I'll just flash by a couple of those, but I wanted to take a second here to point out this gentleman here that was in the last video. That's actor Michael Forrest. And he actually is the actor that played Apollo in that Star Trek episode that got me into astronomy.
That's awesome.
It was just really cool. 50 years later, I was able to meet him and tell him that. It was really cool. Okay, so if you get to that page after you see the intro video, if you want to see any of the individuals for longer, they all did a 30-second to 1 minute video. There's Josh Peck there, Georgia Mary, the Disney cover artist, Miss Ireland here, Fig Riley. Ronald D. Moore actually is producer of For All Mankind. It's the current Apple TV show that looks at an alternate history of the Apollo program and what might have happened if we had not gotten to the moon first. Aaron Mack is a STEM person just like yourself, who goes out, gives talk. Doug Drexler, graphic designer on many sci-fi shows. Mike Forrest and Barbara Luna, actors. Chantal Van Satten is in For All Mankind. Trey Calloway, TV producer, and of course, if you know anybody in the group, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's the star of the new Cosmos series, and many other things. And then at that point, we put out the call for others to respond. So this is kind of a cheat here. We got the first response we got was from Jim Bridenstine, the administrator at NASA. So that's not really a general public person replying. But you go down and you see here, I think there's 50 different ones that Hubble retweeted. There's the Pillars of Creation that we talked about earlier. This is the Hubble anniversary image that I'll show in a minute, etc. Anyways, you can just go down and see all of those things and then get inspired for what you put in yourself. So that's, oh, here I can just show you really quickly. This is the intern page that I told you about. There's the announcement that everything is going virtual, but that's what it looks like when you get to the page, if you want to go in and just see what opportunities might be there for you in the future. Okay, one of the coolest things we put out this year, and this is very simple, you can all do this as soon as we get off the air. We have a tool here that allows you to see what Hubble saw on your birthday. So you just go in, pick your month, say, I don't know, February, pick a date, say the 2nd, and submit, and it shows you what Hubble image was taken on that day of the year. And you can hide the info if you want to get a big picture. So you can go and see, have something that's your own from Hubble that way. And that actually has turned out to be one of the most popular things we've ever done. We were astonished by the response to it. I think we've gotten 106 million uses of the tool so far. So it's been crazy. Something else that we put out is this, what we call 30 years, 30 images. So in the month leading up to the anniversary, we would pick an image from one of the Hubble's 30 years and print it. And this is actually the anniversary image that we put out the week of the 24th. Star forming region here, dust and gas throughout the region, bright stars that are starting to clear the gas and dust away. Down here is a single object that has blown material out into this ring around it. And this is on Flickr, so you can go to that link and peruse all of them. Let's see, I don't have time to show you everything. This is actually the 25th anniversary image, another star forming region, which tend to be some of the more picturesque of the things that we look at in astronomy. And there you see all the dark clouds and pinnacles of bright stars that were born recently, hot stars, which burn fiercely, but not for as long as everything else. More star forming regions. Here's a spiral galaxy that had a near collision with this neighboring one. It kind of distorted the spiral into this long, elongated form. This is Mystic Mountain, another star formation region. You can see the tendrils of gas boiling off. There's a jet up at the top here, a shock wave where material from the jet is hitting the interstellar medium. These really dark clouds here, which have a lot of material coming together, forming stars and solar systems. This is a fun image here showing interacting galaxies that have come and collided with each other and distorting them into all sorts of bizarre shapes compared to the normal Saturn. Here's one down here that's got 4 or 5 galaxies all in a collision. Our neighboring Andromeda galaxy is actually going to collide with us in about 5 billion years, so you don't have to go running away just yet, but it'll be interesting, or if we were around, it would be interesting to see that. This is my favorite image, a large mosaic of the Carina Nebula. And if you zoom in on this one, you can see, I mean, some of the most famous Hubble images are tiny pieces of this. Go over here, there is Mystic Mountain. Over to the side here is Eta Carina, both of which you'll see in their own rights as beautiful images. So this, you can actually download this from the Hubble site, and its size, it has enough pixels that you can blow it up and get a print and put it on your wall. That's how big the picture is. Another interacting galaxy, beautiful spiral galaxy, the Whirlpool galaxy. Another interacting galaxy here. Horsehead Nebula for obvious reasons. Exploding star with a shell around it. Io going around Jupiter. That's a shadow of Io here. So the sun's up to the upper left, shines by, Io blocks the light, and you get the shadow on the surface, the upper atmosphere of Jupiter. Saturn and its rings. So we look very nearby with Hubble at planets in our own system, and we look to the edge of the universe in these deep field images here. There's the pillars of creation again, etc. And I think the last one there is a picture of Jupiter. Janet, how tight are we on the cutoff on the hour?
It's like we're 6 minutes away. So it's like, I know that there are tons of questions. I mean, truly, we could watch you go through these images and talk about them all day. And but we've got questions if you're ready for those, or anything else you'd like to tell them before we go to questions.
Just if you go, the main Hubble Space Telescope page is here. You just go to nasa.gov/Hubble, and this is the source for everything you're looking for. So you go there, the anniversary image, info on the telescope, and here in the bottom right is a section on the 30th anniversary. So you can go and see all this stuff that I was showing you at the bottom of that page. But let's go to questions now.
All right, if you will stop your screen share, my dear. Perfect. All right, I'm going to get everybody up here. Let's see. Now, Jesse shot me 3 questions during your talk. So he's got 3 that are really great. And then we've got, so Jesse, we're going to start with you. Lucas, I see you, Evie, Maggie. So I'll be around to everybody. So Jesse, go ahead.
Did Hubble ever catch any scary images? And if it did, do we keep those or will we discard them?
Well, we don't discard anything. And as a matter of fact, any image we've ever taken is put in an archive, and anyone can go in and retrieve and download the image. So we don't hide anything, certainly. Nothing really scary. Sometimes, around the middle of October, we go hunting in the archives to see if there's anything that we can kind of make look scary, or, just modify it properly to tweet for Halloween. So if you'll go back and look at our post in the last part of October, you'll usually see something. It's more often in something that looks like a carved pumpkin or the like. Although occasionally you find something that looks a little bit like a ghost, and we play it up to pretend. But no, we haven't seen anything in terms of a scary object, and we haven't seen any Borg or our first order people coming our way. So we're okay for now.
Nice. What was your 3rd question, Jesse, before I move on? That was it, those 2. All right, so coming to you, Lucas. What's your question?
My question is, before I ask my question, I have a couple of things I want to say.
Okay.
The one thing is, those 2 things about Minecraft.
Hey, Lucas, we're going to save the Minecraft stuff. Do you have any question on Hubble? And then we'll get to Minecraft after we let Dr. Ken go. Any question on Hubble?
Yes.
Okay.
It was, how has Hubble been holding up in these last 10 years since his last update was more than a decade ago?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, Lucas. We were worried about that ourselves, because we normally went about every 3 to 5 years between servicing, and it's now been 11 years. It's actually, I think May 11th was the 11th anniversary of the launch of the last servicing mission. So we took good care during that mission to do everything we could to extend the life of Hubble. And we are still, knock on wood, operating at maximum science capability, as good as we have ever been. We are, lucky at some level, but we've also tried very hard to manage to run the telescope in a way that maximizes lifetime. At the same time, we don't want to, you could maximize lifetime by just stopping and not doing anything and being scared, but then you'd give up the opportunity to get the science now. And while everything is working well, you want to get as much science as possible. So we try to operate the telescope in a way that gets maximum science out now, but does what it can to extend the lifetime later. So we do things like trying to minimize the number of times we move. If we have something that rotates with filters on it, we try to schedule things so that you only rotate it a minimum number of times. We don't stop doing anything, but we just operate in a way that makes sense, that's more efficient. So far, we're in good shape.
Did you guys have an estimated, like we think, kind of like when we think about Mars rovers, that you guys, NASA's going to be pleased if they work 90 days and, Spirit worked for 10, Opportunity kept going, all those things. Did you guys have an initial time frame you thought Hubble might do its job?
Yeah, the design lifetime was 15 years.
So it's already
so we've
doubled.
now doubled it, and we expect to operate into the late into the 2020s or perhaps even longer, so another 10 years or more. We'd love to overlap with both the James Webb Space Telescope when it launches in 21, and if we're lucky still operating, we'd like to overlap with WFIRST when it launches in 2025 or 2026. So we'll see. It all depends on the hardware, as long as the hardware doesn't.
Is the long life so long because of very good engineering, you would think?
Yeah, it's because of the good engineering, and it's because we're able to do the servicing missions.
Of course.
More than once, the servicing saved us, or kept instruments going, or at top peak operating efficiency. So the cooperation, the collaboration between the space science program and the human flight program was critical to Hubble's success, and it's something we're forever grateful for. And the two were kind of designed for each other. Hubble was downsized so that it would actually fit into the shuttle, and the shuttle design was at one point altered to match Hubble as well. So that was part of its original justification, and it turned out to be extraordinarily lucky for us that the observatory was serviceable.
So we've got some great questions, a couple more if you're willing to stay past the top of the hour, if you've got time, good sir. So
yeah, I'm fine.
I know you've got something you want to share, so I see you. I'm going to go to two other questions and then come to you, okay? Victoria, what's your question, my dear?
How long did it take to design and build the Hubble telescope?
Great question.
Yeah, and it took a while. If you go back to the over picture, let me just see if I can quickly share a screen here. I actually have a little graphic for that might be interesting. Can you see that?
Uh-huh.
This shows the overall time path to Hubble. So the first idea for it came out in 1946. Lyman Spitzer wrote a paper about the advantages of going to orbit. NASA wasn't established until 1958. 1962, the National Academy actually recommended a large telescope. So this is where the idea starts moving. It wasn't until 1977 that Congress actually funded a new start for the telescope. And Hubble was completed in 85. It was ready for launch then, and then we had the Challenger accident, so launch was delayed till 1990. So if you count from when it first was started in 1977, you say that's 87, 97, 2007. Well, 87, 97, we launched in 90, so it took from 77 to 90 to actually launch. So that's what, 13 years? But the ideas for it and pushing Congress to fund it happened a lot longer than that, further back in time.
Yeah, guys, it's like we don't tend to think about that. Hey, I've got an idea. I wrote a paper, and then 44 years later, the darn thing's finally built and launched. So think about this. Great ideas may take you a lifetime to execute, but oh, the joy that for generations and your legacy will leave behind. Tapa Sweeney, you had some great questions about black holes and those kinds of things. And then Ander, I haven't forgotten you, but do ask your questions, because you also had something about the anomalies, the Atlantic anomalies. So go ahead, Tapa Sweeney, and ask your questions, my dear.
Have you ever experienced the South Atlantic anomaly while communicating with Hubble?
Yeah, actually, the Hubble passes through the South Atlantic anomaly. I think it's for about 5 orbits per day. Hubble actually orbits relatively low down to the Earth, about 300 miles up, and the orbit moves around, so it doesn't always go through the South Atlantic anomaly, but I think it's about 5 orbits at a time it'll pass through it. And when we go through it, we actually turn off the high voltage on some of the instruments to prevent damage. Others keep operating through it. But more than once, we have had what's called a particle event, an energy event, where a high energy particle in the South Atlantic anomaly hits a detector or an electronics and puts a false signal into it. That usually causes the instrument to go into safe mode, to say, so something weird just happened, I don't feel good. And you curl up into a ball and wait for the ground to command you out of that and say, everything's okay. It was just a stray proton or something that hits you. And as you know, that for everybody else, the South Atlantic anomaly is an area where the magnetic field of the Earth dips down and we get high energy particles at a lower altitude than we normally would. And that can cause problems for sensitive electronics. So yeah, that's the first thing we look for. If the telescope has an anomaly of any sort, we look to say, okay, was it in the SAA? Was it in the South Atlantic anomaly? If it was, we're actually usually relieved, because that means it's probably just an energetic hit and we can restart, reboot the system and we'll be okay. So that's perversely the most positive thing we can find out when we're looking at a telescope malfunction. Yay, we were in the anomaly.
And then ask your question about black holes, or somebody else has a question about black holes. Was that you, Tapa Sweeney?
Yeah. Earlier it was said that some galaxies emit X-shaped radio waves from the black holes. So why do they do so?
It's the X-rays are caused by charged particles being accelerated very rapidly into the black hole through the magnetic or along the magnetic field lines. And as they are accelerated or decelerated, they give off the X radiation. So that's how we first detected black holes. Hubble was the first to actually prove their existence empirically by observing galaxies and seeing that objects moved around them at really, really high speeds close in. And the only way that those objects would stay bound to the black hole gravitationally is if there's a lot of mass at the center. And we knew because the objects were close in that the mass had to be very concentrated. And when you calculated how much mass and how much volume, the density was high enough to only be a black hole, that regular matter wouldn't have enough material inside that radius. So that was one of the prime discoveries of Hubble, is proving the existence of black holes. And we have found them pretty much in the center of almost every galaxy. And we find that the mass of the black hole correlates with the mass of the overall galaxy. And that's something we didn't know before Hubble.
That is so great. All right, Ander, I know you got something to share. What is your thing you want to share?
I want to share something, but I need to share the screen to be able to share it.
All right, and it does have to do with Hubble, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so Wade, can you give me, on my end with this version that my computer is kind of acting up, can you give me the host now? You have now sharing privileges, my friend.
Okay. Okay, is it working?
It's almost there. There you go. All right, so you're selecting your birthday for us.
Yes, and so this one I really like. This is what Hubble saw on my birthday, and it's a galaxy.
That's great.
And on my rabbit's birthday, which is actually New Year's Day, it saw another galaxy, And here's the funny thing. My dad's, oh no, not that. What's that? Okay. On my dad's birthday, so me and my dad are huge Star Wars fans. And on my dad's birthday, I said, hey, this might be why my dad loves Star Wars so much. It's not Andromeda Galaxy. So I solved the mystery of why my dad loved Star Wars so much.
Oh, I love all of that. I've got
And then
oh, you got
the
somebody
last
else.
one I honestly think is the coolest. This is what it's on my mom's birthday. This is an exploding asteroid.
Okay.
That's
very
brilliant.
cool. Glad to see
Very
the tool being used.
That is excellent. Hey, you know what? So Dr. Ken, Anders' rabbit that we've met is named Luna. And so the fact
Ooh.
that it was meant to be that you and Luna were to have that as a pet because of your both birthdays being in galaxies. All right. Do I have any more questions? I think I saw something here from Jesse that you want to show us in real life is what you said. All right. So Jesse, what you have to show us? Is it coming over there? You have to help me unmute you, my dear.
So I found this in my yard yesterday, actually. When I was outside just walking around, I found this.
Oh, what is that?
We're not actually sure, but we think it's some sort of like fossil.
Ooh.
Cool.
You know what? That is for further scientific investigation, but I love that you found it. Can you hold it up super close to the camera for us to see?
Yeah, and say something so that you take the speaker view.
Yeah, keep talking about it.
Jesse, talk.
So it's got these little shiny areas too. So I'm wondering if those are like minerals or maybe something embedded into the rock. Like you see one right there, and one right there.
It's very
I
cool.
thought it was just really cool.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a piece of lava or, and I know we're all thinking in the back of our heads, maybe it's a meteorite. I don't know. It's hard to tell from the screen, but very cool object. Yeah, keep it and start looking around on the web.
Take some photographs and send it to Janet, and we can send them out to our friends who are geologists, maybe.
Hey, yeah.
Absolutely do that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Very cool.
I can help find some geologists.
You know what? This is, I'm going to mute you. Where are you? Yeah, I got to mute you over there. All right, guys, this has been so great. And you're getting to see that, yes, indeed, there is a world out there.
And where it is, and what it is.
Oh, yeah, let's see. Just make sure, anybody last questions, everybody saw that it's like hubble.gov or Hubble, no, nasa.gov/Hubble is how you find your picture. If you're going to maybe send out a little birthday message on Twitter or Instagram, put the hashtag Happy Birthday Hubble or hashtag Hubble 30th. That way the team from NASA will see it. Any last things you want to tell everybody, Dr. Ken? I could listen to you all day. And before I throw it to you, guys, we saw
Hashim had the question. Did you, Hashim? Or were you just stretching? No? You had no question? Okay.
Thank you, Artemis. I appreciate that. I don't ever want to miss anybody. I was moved because you saw Dr. Ken kind of get really have an emotional experience watching people talk about what Hubble has meant to them, being able to meet somebody that inspired him as a kid, who now he's actually doing the work that was inspired in him in that moment. So I just want you guys to kind of like even hug yourself and go, what an amazing experience it's been today. Because if anything, the stars encourage us to know that we are all thermodynamic miracles. The chance of you being you with your very own unduplicable biological signature is something like 1 in 400 quadrillion. And to know that the calcium in your teeth, the iron in your blood, the carbon in your DNA is the same stuff that exists in the hearts of stars. Oh my gracious. Carl Sagan wasn't kidding when he said we are star stuff. And so that is what I want you to grasp today as we just get inspired by these lovely images of Hubble. You, my dears, are 100% star stuff. There is no limit to what you can create or innovate or discover. And if I could just wish all of you something to follow in a path that Dr. Ken took, to be inspired by lots of things as a kid, and then to be one of the happiest people on the planet because he's doing something he loves. So again, this has been a marvelous day. Dr. Ken, any last things you'd like to add before we go and we say thank you to all of you?
Well, Janet, that's a really hard little speech to follow. I think I'll just give my chair up to you here. Very well stated.
No, it's just something that I believe in so wholeheartedly. The gift you and your team and Hubble have given us inspired me, I know, to look up and look at the stars. So maybe the best gift we can give you today is to say thank you.
It is, and it's inspiring just to see the interest and the excitement of it. It helps when we get buried in the bureaucracy and the paperwork, which is the other side that I don't talk about too much. It's nice to remember why we're doing this and why we're excited about it. The other thing I'll just mention by coincidence, this week, I took some time out to do this because it looked like a wonderful thing to do, is actually the time where we are reviewing proposals from the worldwide astronomical community to observe with Hubble next year. So once a year, we put out a call to astronomers worldwide and say, give us your best ideas, tell us what you would do if you had so many hours or orbits of Hubble time. And we get usually about 6 times the number of proposals that we have time to schedule. So you only have a 1 in 6 chance of actually a proposal winning. And we select them usually by getting people together, astronomers together, and we do what's called a peer review. We look at each other's proposals and figure out what are the very best ones, and then they get to use the telescope next year. So we're right smack in the middle of that now. And as you can imagine, it's a challenging thing because there's a lot of really good proposals that you have to say no to just because it doesn't fit on the schedule. But we're today in day 2 of that process. Is actually a 5 or 6 day period that we go through, and we're doing it all virtually this year, which is unusual. So we'll see how that works. But just think of it now, guys. You're right in the middle of the action, sitting here, and everybody will be waiting with bated breath for the next 2 weeks. Did my proposal make it? And I've got one in there too. And the odds are, 5 out of 6 times I won't get it, but I'm going to wait and see at the end of the month whether my proposal gets approved or not. Anyways,
well, we are all going to cross our fingers that your proposal gets approved and wish you the very best of luck. Lucas, if your question is about Hubble, you can ask it, but we're going to stay on a few minutes after to answer your Minecraft questions. Do you have another Hubble question or comment?
No, it's just the very thing. I opened a thing for Minecraft, and my mouse was going crazy. It destroyed stuff, but then I didn't even meant to do that. It's just like I was trying to move around, but it destroyed it crazy.
All right. Well, we're going to get to that
in Hashin's hotel.
Oh, well, we'll get to that in just a second. Right now, I am going to unmute you all, and we're going to give a big old standing ovation and round of applause to Dr. Ken Carpenter, the Viking Preservation and Education Project, Rachel Tillman. Thank you so much for making this possible today. Everybody, all right, say thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Been a blast.
All right. All right. So as we go, Dr. Ken, you're free to move about the cabin and live long and prosper over there. We'll bid you good day. So Lucas and Alex, Alex, can you address his potential Minecraft issue there?
Okay, so Lucas, if you're having trouble with your mouse, it might be that maybe one of your keys are stuck, like the